Welcome to Leaders Gotta Lead. Join our leaders and hosts, Dan Gomer and Scott Harshman, as they bring you powerful strategies and insights to help you lead with purpose, impact, and unstoppable success.
Welcome back to another episode of Leaders Gotta Lead. The whole point of this podcast is to bring on people that we find throughout multiple different industries, whether it's in real estate or with Mike today through us coaching together on a fifth grade team, just finding people that we think are super, super great at leadership and what it means to them and are passionate about sharing of what leadership truly means and how to become a better leader. So we're not telling you how to lead. We're telling you what to look at so that you can learn how to lead. Mike Jones comes here with us. I'm going to read a little bit of his bio, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about him as well. So Mike grew up in the Littleton area. He graduated from Chatfield in 1995. He looks like he graduated in 2015. Football did take him to BYU. That's where he met his wife, Debbie. They now have 6 children, 5 boys, 1 girl. So that's a big family. They love sports, spend summer days outside at the lake, waterboarding, skiing, surfing, that type of stuff. He's built a career in residential real estate for the past 24 years. Currently focuses on developmental, new construction, scrapes, that type of stuff. So if you see a lot of properties downtown Denver that are getting scraped, Mike might have a hand in that. So that's huge to see, and that's a lot of leaders that you're going to have to lead on that. So we can dive into that one as well. And then he does a lot of residential rentals as well. So built his career, has a huge family. I met Mike coaching our sons for fifth grade football, and I gravitated to Mike because I saw how patient and how he was able to implement and be a leader to fifth graders, which is extremely, extremely difficult if you've ever coached younger kids, especially younger boys that are full of energy. So to see Mike's patience and then to see how the kids would gravitate around him as well and listen to him, that's what I was blown away by. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we brought Mike on today so that we can learn from him. So Mike, welcome on. Thanks so much for joining.
Hey, Scott, excellent introduction. I really do appreciate it. I do have to clear up one thing, though. I do have a big family, but we do not waterboard our children. We do wakeboard with our children, but no waterboard. A little too extreme for me in this plan.
You're not military style then, all right? So
no, when you said waterboarding on the weekends,
right?
Like, ooh, that's not going to come off well. I think people are tuning out already.
I didn't even pick up on that.
Appreciate it. Super complimentary, but thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear you're not waterboarding your kids.
Exactly. Just want to be
I feel
clear.
better about this conversation already.
So Dan and I were the ones that really wanted to make sure that we're getting this out here. So Dan is also helping. I mean, we're gonna be grinding you with some questions today, Mike. So be ready for it.
All right, I'll do my best.
First question: what does an ideal leader look like to you, Mike?
Thinking about that, even like when you sent me some of these questions that you might ask, without giving any real specifics or detail about individual leaders, I thought the best way to answer that question was to say anybody that has influence in my life, I've always thought about that person after I'd been with them. Does that make sense? So I have an experience, I have some time that I've spent with that person, and then I find myself afterwards reflecting on that time because it was either a good experience or a bad experience, right? And those good experiences have led me to find that those seem to be the very best leaders that I've seen in my life, if that makes sense. So people that are just influential and you actually spend some time thinking about them when you're not with them. Is that fair?
Yeah, I love it. So what are some of the characteristics that after you spent time with them that you're like, man, that is a good leader? What are some of those characteristics that you see?
Yeah, the number one thing I would say is that I felt a genuine appreciation from that person, for me personally. Like they took a vested interest in who I was and like some of my concerns or some of my successes or achievements. And they made me feel a certain way about myself based on my interaction with them.
So they put you first as opposed to putting you second by asking more questions to learn about you. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of it. A good listener, somebody who actually would ask the second or third question about my question so they could understand even better. And then they actually, had enough experience to where they could speak to me in terms that I understood, but also told me that they understood what I'm talking about. So I felt like good leaders take that time and don't rush through things, but they'll really be vested in the time and space that they're currently in. And sometimes that's me. They were vested in me and my time and what my concerns were or my questions were. Those are really good leaders in my mind.
I like it.
Mike, did you play football at BYU?
Let's just be clear on that too. There's playing and then there's being on the team.
Okay. You were on the team.
So yeah, I was a scout tight end for a year, my freshman year when I redshirted, and I served a church mission for 2 years. So in 95, 96, I was that scout team guy. Came back after my mission, kind of some change at the top and some JUCO transfers at the tight end position, and saw it was going to be a long road. So I was a year and a half after my mission. So 2.5 total years playing football at BYU.
So what was, just looking on that, right? Like, you look at a college, I think being a football coach has got to be one of the hardest coaching roles in all of sports. The amount of moving pieces that you have in a football program is just absolutely ridiculous. I don't know how anybody does it. So looking back at your experience with your coaches at BYU, you don't have to name a specific coach. You can if you want, but what were some of the traits that, or even your high school coaches, what were some of the traits that the best leaders that you had really possess? I mean, you talk about asking a lot of questions and things like that. Like, what did they do that had like a solid impact on your life? You still think about them today. They've really impacted your life. What did they do that helped you?
Excellent. Great question. So you may or may not know this name, but Lavelle Edwards, longtime coach at BYU. The stadium's named after him now over in Provo, Utah. And I'll answer this question with just a quick story. My freshman year, my brother was playing with me at the same time over at BYU that year. My older brother, he's 4 years older than I am. And I'd ask him all the time at practice, where's Lavelle? What does this guy even do? You know what I'm saying? And it was a mystery because during practices, he would drive around in a golf cart and hit each individual group's drills, things like that. And he would observe. But then he'd be gone most of the time. And then he'd come back out from the administration building or the coaches' meeting or offices, and he'd break the team down. And so I always wondered, and I went on my mission wondering that. Well, the whole year I went by, this guy's not that great of a coach, right? Well, come to find out after my mission, I'm getting back into it. All that time that he was away, he was spending time with athletes in his office during practice time. And there was not one person from that program that ever came away saying, you know what, Lavelle Edwards doesn't know what he's doing, as I did my freshman year. You know what I'm saying? Because of how much care and concern he had for each individual player. Now, obviously, he's not taking 132 kids in every week, or however many kids were trying to be a participant on that team, but he would attack those problem areas, right, or challenges, or even just bring kids in to say, hey, I haven't talked with you in a while. So that was super impressive to me. Again, more of like a servant leadership style, if you will, which I always appreciated. He was not a yeller or a screamer. He was just a leader of men, a leader of young men.
Love that.
I love that. Now you coach freshmen at Chatfield as well on the football team. With what you've learned from your experiences with Lavelle, how have you incorporated that into your coaching style as well?
That's a great question. A lot of it has to do with Lavelle, but there's also my little league coach, Ken Bishar. Okay, when the time I was tiny, third grade all the way up to 8th grade, he was the same coach the whole time. And a lot of the things that I do with the freshmen and all the other teams that I've coached is because of his leadership style. Super demanding, high expectation, but he was the greatest teacher I'd ever been around. He spent time to teach kids how to play the game versus try to tell kids how to play the game, if that makes sense. So those are the things. It takes time and effort, especially like you said earlier with rambunctious 5th graders or whoever it is, and it'll pull at your patience strings for sure. But at the end of the day, the kids have to know that you have their back, but only because you've taught them and spent that time with them in those trenches, if you will, to teach them the game. And they did that with me from a young age, and I've implemented a lot of those things that I learned as a little kid with these teams that I coach now.
So can you go more deeper on that, some of the specifics, right? So obviously there's like the tactical things, right, that you probably learned going through that. But is there some pillars maybe that you learned from that coach that you now implement? What do you, when the rubber meets the road and things are getting crazy, what do you fall back on, to make sure that you are staying in alignment, to make sure that you're moving kids forward so you're not getting lost, right? What are your pillars of leadership that you?
I love that. So when things do get rough, right? Teaching a kid how to do a proper down block in the middle of the game when you're losing by 3 touchdowns might not be super effective. But when you can get to that kid's level and kneel on the ground and look him in the eye and just give him a little hug and say, hey, you're doing the best that you can and keep doing it. And I know you can probably do it even better this next time. That's the type of pillar that I'm talking about. So it really comes down to the relationship based versus X's and O's and how to play the game. It's really, does that kid trust me and does he believe me when I tell him he can do certain things? So it's a real relationship based leadership style.
And I saw a lot of that with the 5th grade team that we did coach with. The kids just gravitated to you. It was great to see. I was hemming and hawing like the last 2 years. We've got to get somebody in here that can help our offensive line. We've got to get somebody in here. And to see the growth from July to our last game was remarkable. And I put a lot of it on your shoulders because of the way that you were able to relate and build the relationships with those kids. I saw you do a lot of different things. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but I picked it up just because of being like a leader myself, but also being led. And you did demand that they understood the assignment, right? Like you came up with very simple things, assignment, execution. You tested them on a regular basis. You were able to like really break things down to them that I think by the end of the season, they really understood that they were a big key role of winning a football game. And not just thinking about football, but going into your kids, right? Having 6 kids, how do you relate football and being a leader with your 6 kids and making sure that like, hey, we're all on the same page here. Let's really hone in and build a good camaraderie as a team.
That's awesome. Super complimentary again, Scott. So I appreciate it. But you did mention 3 words that I apply in every aspect of my life, right? You've heard me say assignment, execution 1,000 times this year. And so repetition, I think, is a really good, huge piece of good leadership style. So they're not wondering what's coming next or are we going to learn too much or too little? It's just 3 simple steps, right? On every single play. And so I've actually applied that in business, right? Am I aligned today with what I need to do? Do I know what my assignment is today? And how can I do it well? And then go out and execute. You got to be a doer. You got to go get it. You got to be responsible and be held accountable, right? Same thing with family life, right? Am I aligned with my wife today? Right? Are we on the same page? And do we need to have a little 5-minute talk and make sure things go smooth today or all those sorts of things? Then you got to go execute. You got to fulfill your part of the bargain, right? With those relationships that are 50-50 deal. And then the same thing with children. Oh man, isn't that you roll the dice when you have one more kid, right? We chose to have 6. And so you've got to be aligned with your kids, right? You got to know your assignment as a dad, a father, a husband. And then you also have to go out and do. You can't just talk about it. You got to go do it and be the best dad, father, husband you can possibly be. So those 3 things have really simplified my life in every aspect. And I think they're super motivating for little kids to learn, hey, I do know my alignment. I'm lined up properly, right? Hey, I actually do know who I'm supposed to block on this play. And that's exciting because now I know I can go get them. I can go execute. Yeah, so that type of leadership style too.
Now, let's get into a little bit on the business side as far as a leader. Sure. Dan, is that good where you want to go, or is there any other questions on the?
No, yeah, roll with it, man.
All right. So where I want to get into this is like when I first got into real estate, I was in new construction. Now you're
bless your heart.
I know, yeah. So like there's a lot. For anybody who doesn't know, FHA came out after World War II during the Great Depression because the federal government realized that there's thousands of jobs created from home building. And only about 6 to 7% of the population at that time actually owned a home. So they came out with FHA to increase the opportunity for home ownership to help build wealth, but also create the jobs after the Great Depression, right? So like when you think of the thousands of jobs, I just gave you like a useless nugget, but the thousands of jobs that go into home building, and you're talking about taking a home down and then rebuilding it. to be a leader at that point, like give us some insight on what you have to make sure is done. How do you surround yourself with other people to make sure that the assignment is executed? See what I did there?
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I'm going to keep it super high level, like without diving too far into the weeds, because you're right. There's so much to it, right? It's like, it's quite an endeavor. Every single project is quite an endeavor. Another leader I'll just mention, his name is Chad Lewis. He was an All-American tight end at BYU when I was a freshman, and he took me under his wing. He kind of mentored me through my first year, and man, thank heavens for him, or I don't know if I would even lasted that first year. But he wrote a book after he played for the Eagles for like 10 years, won a Super Bowl with them, the whole thing. He wrote a book called Surround Yourself with Greatness. And he's the most humble guy, so he's never going to take credit for anything he's ever done. You know, his All-American status in his mind is because of Coach Edwards and all the guys around him. He's just that guy, right? And so I've tried to implement that in my life, whereas, you know, when you surround yourself with good people, right, whether it's the laborman that makes $20 an hour sweeping your dirty floors, you know, after a long day of, you know, rough install with plumbing, electrical, HVAC. If you surround yourself with good people that are trying, right, I think that's half the battle. Just knowing that, hey, the guys that I have on site, they might not be the most productive, right, but they know that this is a team effort and they want the team to win, right? So that's hard to shape an entire team like that in new construction. So you win some, you lose some. But overall, the overarching theme for me has been, I have got to surround myself with good people because I can't be here 100% of the time. Is that fair? That makes sense?
It does, which will kind of lead me into my next question because, you know, surrounding yourself with good people, it means something to everybody, right? There's different characteristics, there's different core values. So what are the core values that you look for to identify that somebody's a good person?
Excellent. So yeah, this goes back to like faith, tradition, and Christianity, right? So honesty, hard work, integrity, people that understand that, you know, you might have a foul mouth, but they have an awareness of where, hey, maybe those people around me don't want to hear those words, things like that. Just good people that are aware and want to do the right thing, you know? So I know that, you know, if my electrician's having a rough day, he knows I can come in and maybe we'll blow 30 minutes of, you know, installing line, right, and talk about family life for 30 minutes on the job. He knows he can trust me to do that and I won't be upset, or he knows that we can talk about those things, right? Because it's not just about laying cable, laying wire, right? Life is way more important than that. So surrounding myself with people like that, regardless of rank within the hierarchy of construction, right? They just know we're all trying to be on the same page.
Yeah, and you know, I love that. We actually did an interview recently with Jennifer Nichols, and we were talking about something very similar. You know, I heard you talk about like getting down on a knee and like putting your arm around your player and talking to him. You know, you're taking an electrician away from his job and talking about his family life, right? So there's a lot of people who might look at something like that and say, you know, you're going to get taken advantage of, right? They're not going to work as hard. You're soft. You know, you got to rule with an iron fist. You got to like make sure they know who's boss and you got to keep them on track or whatever, right? How do you walk that line, you know, and is it like an intentional thing that you're doing where you're walking that line between, we'll call it kind of like being with them as a person, but then at the same time having these expectations that they get their job done? How do you walk that line so that they take care of whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing, but at the same time treat them like a human being?
Love that. It's such a great question. So from my perspective, I mean, I can't speak for them, but let's just take like a plumber, for example, right, on one of my job sites. I've always tried to walk into these job sites with a bigger picture than that this is just a plumber. Does that make sense? So let's say I go in and the guy's, you know, 3 days behind, and I berate the guy and I tell him, hey, listen, there's, you know, you're getting docked on our contract because it's a per diem, and I make life miserable for him. He's going to be motivated to finish that job, right? But the problem with that approach is I got 4 or 5 deals in the pipeline. And if I don't treat this guy right, from a business perspective, I don't have a plumber for my next job because he thinks I'm just a jerk and it's not worth it, right? So I try to go into these jobs, not just for the business aspect, but I also try to look at this guy going, okay, the way I treat this guy right now is probably going to be repeated behavior the way he'll treat his kids when he gets home based on how his day was today. or the way he's going to treat his wife tonight when he's sitting around just trying to get some downtime. Right. So if we can be influential in the lives of others to the point where it affects their behavior even later on, hey, you know what? Mike was patient with me today. I'm going to be patient with my 9-year-old, even though he didn't do this or the other. Or you know what? My wife and I aren't seeing eye to eye right now, but I'm going to just do my best to be as patient as I can with this circumstance or situation. So I think we're undercutting our influence, especially from a leadership perspective, if we don't realize that even our behavior can affect other people's behavior. No different than our children at home, or maybe our wife or something, whatever it is. I mean, I think our actions really do influence the actions of others. So I try to keep that in mind as I deal with people in general, just anybody I meet, but specifically in business. At the end of the day, who cares if my house is listed 2 weeks later than it should have been? In the big picture, who really cares, right? I mean, it's not up to them. It's not their responsibility. They're just going to be motivated based on, I want to do a good job for Mike today. And that's hopefully the wish.
Right. And so what you're really talking about is values. Like, you sound very clear on what your value proposition is. And you say things like, well, if it finishes 2 weeks late, then it finishes 2 weeks late. Like, hey guys, Dan Gomer here with the Leaders Gotta Lead podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you are enjoying the content. And if you are, I've got great news, because there's more where that came from. Just click on the link in the show notes to discover new ways to plug into what we're doing, to find new content that we're putting out, and to discover how we might be able to work together to elevate your leadership game. Just click on the link in the show notes and let's take our leadership success to the next level. Who really cares, right? Like, at the end of the day, you have a value system that's more important to that. I am curious, on that same front, how do you go long-term picture with these contractors? We'll just kind of focus on the contractor side of things. Do you believe that you get more out of them? They work a little bit faster, they work a little bit harder, they stay a little bit later, they're willing to work harder for you, actually, because of the way that you treat them, versus the iron fist thing where you're kind of putting your thumb on them and like forcing action. Do you feel that, even though it may seem like a softer approach, do you feel that you actually get more out of the people that work with you?
100%. 100%. And that's evidenced by real life situation, circumstance, where these guys will actually come to me and say, hey, listen, Mike, I'm actually paring down my scope of guys I'm working for, and I'm only going with you and one other guy. And I ask them, like, what is that? You're like, because I enjoy working for you. Anytime anybody tells me that, it makes me that almost as good as the adrenaline rush of going to the closing table and closing that deal. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's a huge value proposition for me. Is, again, it comes down to, quality relationships in life. I don't want to have to worry about some guy that, did wrong on a job, right? And then all of a sudden it's a small community in what I do. And all of a sudden everybody else is hearing about, hey, you might not want to work for that guy, right? That's the big risk. That's the business risk. But above and beyond that, it's like, well, I really didn't do my job today as a good human, as a good Christian, of treating this person as they should be treated, if that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love how you incorporate thinking bigger picture, as far as like how I treat somebody. They very well might take it on and keep passing it on, right? Like down the line.
The butterfly effect, right?
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
I mean, in sales, right? We're all in sales of some capacity. Interesting, because I'll have people on my team. They're like, yeah, they hung up on me. And I'm like, okay, well, what time of the day did it happen? I mean, we don't know what's happening in their life at that particular time, right? They could have just gotten a wreck. I mean, this has happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to both of you having kids, but like, you're dropping your kids off to daycare, and next thing you know, they have a blowout, right? They're one of the younger kids, like still in diapers. They have a blowout, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're frazzled. So you never know what's happening in somebody's life. And I love the approach of, hey, let's get more relational, as opposed to like, you have to do it this way. If you don't do it this way, you're worthless, and therefore they just take it on down the line. And I mean, they're sending the same message on to their kids, which technically, what you're telling me as a leader, you're not only leading that one person, you're leading that one person through them with their kids and spouses and everything else. So I love to hear that type of it.
That's the impact you hope to have. Like I said earlier, when I think about people that have been influential, I'm thinking about it outside the time that I'm with them, right? So hopefully when they're telling their family about their day at work, they're saying, yeah, I got this great guy I'm working for, and I really enjoy working for him. the money's not exactly where I'd want it to be or whatever, but they're willing to roll that dice just because of the relationship there.
Yeah. How many projects do you have going on at any given time?
Yeah. So my bandwidth from recent acquisition all the way to rolling off at a closing is like maybe 10 to 13 projects at any given time. So it's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
To hear that and having the number of people, it's a lot of people that you're employing, that you're leading.
And the coaching on top of it.
Yeah. Then you have coaching, then you have your rentals. Like you're leading a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've ever like realized it, but you are.
Quite a few. But then efficiencies, right? There's got to be efficiencies in place to be able to do something like that. And this wouldn't happen for me, 10, 15 years ago. Technology is a blessing, right, for all of us. And it's amazing what you can get done through efficiencies through technology. So I say that because I require all my general contractors to use a certain software that's daily updates with pictures, questions, concerns. So I can be off site. I can take 5 minutes at practice, which you've probably seen before on the phone, or answering a quick email to answer a quick question, right? So you can be efficient, I think, as well through technology and other resources.
How do you lead people? This is going to be I'm going to try to figure out how I can create this question. How do you lead people to understand that your biggest priority, from what I've learned about you, isn't business? It's not your rentals. It's not your flips. It's not business. I wouldn't even say it's necessarily coaching. I think your biggest main priority in life is your family. I do respect that. And in real estate, you'll hear people say, well, real estate never sleeps. BS. It definitely does.
Interest, on the other hand, does not sleep.
Exactly. That can
be painful. That can be painful, especially recently.
Yes. Well, hopefully that'll start coming down for you. But, with that being said, how do you have people understand that, like, hey, I don't need a 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock phone call. Like my hours are 9 to 5 or whatever they are. But then also having the capacity to say, hey, if you need me in this type of scenario, I guess setting clear expectations of like, what is something that's on fire versus what is something that's smoke.
I love it. So I think that starts out with an understanding of scope, right? And so with my business, let's just focus on the development side, right? I work with 2 or 3 general contractors, and I feel like over the years, they've stuck with me through thick and thin because that vision, it's not just all of this business isn't just so I can succeed, right? So they're not just, helping Mike become better financially and help his family situation. They understand that I'm in it for them as well. So I've done deals that are outside of contract boundaries just because I felt like they've done a good job to where they feel appreciated. And maybe that's financially, maybe that's, hey, take your family on a vacation or whatever it is, right? They just understand that, hey, they are not bound by the letter of the law of this contract. They know that there's flexibility with Mike as my boss, right? But they also know, more importantly, that Mike wants me to succeed. Mike's not going to be upset if I go and contract with another builder or an investor to build their house for them too, because Mike knows that's a blessing for the GC's life and family. Does that make sense? So that didn't happen initially because I had to try to make it work and, redline this thing. But I learned over time that just does not work. It just doesn't work for the long run for anything, for business, for relationships, for any of that. So I'll finish this up with just one wise guy, a good friend of mine told me one time, and I've tried to implement this in my life. It's like in life, you should have like 2 trophy cases. You know what I'm saying? The first one, you spend all your life, like the first 20 years, 30 years of your career, trying to fill it up with your own personal trophies, right? But then there's a second trophy case. At some point in your life, you got to decide like, hey, enough is enough, right? Here, I got to start helping other people stash their trophy case with some wins. And so I've tried to do that with my employees. I've tried to do that with my general contractors. So I know, like, if you were to call them right now, they would say, oh yeah, Mike's got my back. He's really helped me through my own personal career and my advancement versus just run these guys into the ground until I'm done. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know what? I actually remember, so I don't know if Scott told you this, but I used to do fix and flips and stuff early on in my career. When I left education, I got into doing fix and flips for 3 or 4 years. And a friend of mine connected me with another guy, and we were partners on a couple flips. And man, I still just vividly remember one time there was this guy laying tile, and he walked in and I think they were like not straight a little bit or something. And the way he talked to this person was just disgusting. And every contractor that he had, it didn't matter what number they gave him. Hey, how much is it to replace this window? Okay, great. How about blah? Just everything. You know, there's an old In Living Color skit. I don't know if you guys ever watched In Living Color, but he's like, how much for this stack of gum? And he's like,
way back. You're throwing
yeah, he's like 50 cents. How about I give you 35 cents and you know, and like all this, like that's how he was. And I just remember like being in on these deals. I did 2 of them with him, and I was just like, I will never, ever work with this person again. And none of his contractors ever worked with him again. Every single project, well, it was only 2, but both projects, we had a whole new crew on everything. And man, like it was such a great learning experience for me early on in my real estate career of how not to treat people. And you know what you're talking about here about like kind of, I would call it leading with your heart, like putting people's best interests first, asking questions, getting to know people. You know, that's how you get the most out of people. Like I truly believe that. I've experienced that myself. You look at the best coaches in sports, most of them are the ones that show that they care, you know? And so I think it's just great. You know, it's inspiring to hear you talk about real life experience of how you have implemented these kinds of things, and you're operating on a very high level. And yet your number one value, as I see it from what you've explained to us today, is people first. Yeah. And you can still operate on a high level, you know, which I think is amazing.
And I think it takes time and effort, right? I mean, when I first got started right out of the gate, out of school, you're pretty ambitious, right? You don't have a whole lot of zeros in your bank account. You got to make things happen, and whole American dream thing, and work. So it's an evolution, I think, for every single person. And as you go through, you make your mistakes, you try to correct those, you course correct, and you're like, okay, I think your vision over time becomes way more clear.
Yeah.
I love it. Dan, anything else you want to ask Mike or comment on?
Yeah, I do. I love asking this question because, you know, one thing that we've heard through these interviews pretty consistently is that great leaders they're growers. They're naturally have an inclination to want to grow. Great leaders, right? It's an important aspect of being a good leader. And yet there's still a lot of leaders out there who maybe don't have the time, don't have the resources, don't prioritize it, you know, those kinds of things. What do you think is the biggest hurdle that stops leaders from, I'm going to say innovating, but maybe personally innovating, moving forward, right? Growing, getting better, kind of getting stagnant. What do you think is the biggest hurdle that stops them from moving forward?
Yeah, I think there's 2 words that come to my mind: fear and adversity. You know what I'm saying? So let's take one of your fix and flips, for example. I know so many guys that just had one fix and flip go down that was not a good experience, and they're out. You know, instead of looking at it, analyzing it, saying, okay, this was a very adverse, challenging situation, right? But what can I do to improve and do better, right? And I think that's synonymous with adversity. I think great leaders know how to handle adversity. I'll share just a quick one real quick. My sophomore year, I thought I should have made a certain basketball level, you know, at the Chatfield High School, and I didn't. And I was pouting for a few days, right? And I wake up one morning, and my mirror in my vanity in my bathroom, my mom had drawn a picture of a kite, right? And this kite, you could see this kite, and then she like drew these lines that showed that this wind was blowing super hard, right, on this kite. And at the bottom, it just said, a kite rises against the wind, not with it, right? So I took that, I internalized that, saying, okay, I'm done pouting. I got to go work on my game. I got to understand that this isn't the end of the world as a sophomore in high school. You know what I'm saying? So I think some people just have not had experience or had mentorship on how to handle adversity and challenge. And so it stops their growth. It stops their opportunity to thrive. Whereas some of the most challenging moments in my career have boosted me to a different level because of those failures, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You're talking about mindset, right? You know, there's kind of the old adage, right? It's not about how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. And leveraging adversity to you know, looking at it like our world is completely composed of our worldview. How we see the world is our world.
The reality. Yeah.
It is our reality. And so we get to choose when we get knocked down, when we don't make the team that we want, when we lose money on a deal, when we whatever. We get to choose how we respond to that. Like, I love that concept that your mom drew as well, is that, hey, it's actually the adversity that's going to make you stronger. And it's easy as a leader to fall into a woe is me, oh man, I suck, or whatever it is, and forget that that's all part of the growth process. And if we can just look at the opportunity that's in that challenging time, that's where all the growth resides.
That's a great way to summarize it. Yeah, excellent.
Cool.
There's a lot of nuggets from this one.
I mean, yeah, like I'd like to go grab a beer sometime, talk shop, man. Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks for hopping on here with us. I mean, like I said, there's a ton of nuggets in here. I mean, we might have to have you back on again because we can dissect.
Anytime.
Yeah.
You know what my worldview is, right?
I love it. Well, we always want to give you the opportunity of, if people are wanting to get a hold of you for any fix and flips or maybe scrapes that they're wanting to possibly sell or
Sure.
questions, things like that. How do people get a hold of you, Mike?
Yeah, like I said, my phone number is the most important thing, right? Let's talk on the phone. Let's hear a voice or see a face, so they can call me anytime on my cell phone.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks so much for being on the show, man. It's been great talking with you. I appreciate you being so open to, taking time out of your day to come and share some of your ideas. I mean, a lot of great nuggets being dropped here today. So once again, thank you.
No, thank you guys. Appreciate you inviting me on.
Absolutely.
All right, have a good day, guys.
Have a great one.